to another edition of What's Going On. I'm your host, Tom DeAmber. As always, my friends, we're very thankful you took the time from your busy day to join us. A little bit outside of the ordinary today, you may notice in the background that we are in the woods of beautiful Northeast Kingdom of Vermont. The reason for that is because there has been a lot of speculation and comment made about Operation Jade Helm. And a lot of people out there saying that this is not relevant to anything going on in our lives, that this doesn't pose a threat at all to the American people. And I thought that we would take a perspective of Jade Helm, but start from the beginning. And what I mean about that is some basic history of our country that the average American is not aware of. And also, with that understanding of that history, come to our own determination whether or not what is going on with Jade Helm is relevant in our society, in our future, for the well-being of our children's future. So first of all, what is Jade Helm? Jade Helm is an acronym, and it means Joint Assistance, Deployment, and Execution. And then the Helm means Homeland Eradication of Local Militants. So you have to find this acronym very interesting. Now, I will say this: there is a whole nother language that I call CIAEs, and Jade in CIAEs is a reference to China. Helm is a CIAEs word for control. So whether that has anything to do with who's behind this whole operation, I do not know. There hasn't been any speculation of that, but I always am looking, we are always trying to find a broad perspective of multiple views of any topic that we are covering. So let's get back into some history that the average American may not be aware of. And it has to start, as Amschel Rothschild said, "Give me control of a nation's currency, I care not who makes its laws." And the reason for that, my friends, is if you are controlling the issuance of the currency of any nation, of any corporation, whatever it may be, you are in control of that entity. So have the bankers ever, international bankers, have they ever had control of the United States government's money system through the controlling the issuance? Well, I will tell you that this is the third central bank that this country has been formatted by the international bankers. As Ben Franklin said so eloquently, that the main cause for the colonists to rebel against its mother country, England, was because the King George would not allow the colonists to issue their own non-interest bearing script. So we have to understand that the main cause, yes, the stamp tax had something to do with it, and some other things that went along with, the restriction of firearms and so forth. But the big thing, the impetus that started this whole process of revolution, was the control of the issuance of our currency. And the other key word here being non-interest bearing. What most Americans do not understand is that for every Federal Reserve note, please take notice I did not say dollar, a dollar by the coinage acts of our country in Article 1, Section 8. First of all, Article 1, Section 8, the Congress is charged with control the issuance of our currency, and our currency will be based in species of gold and silver. A dollar, my friends, by the coinage acts is actually 25.8 grains of gold and a 15-to-1 ratio of silver. There is no gold or silver backing our money currently. And for that sake, if you look up Black's Law Dictionary, which we have done in our program many times, we do not have money, because money, according to law, does not encompass debt. Federal Reserve note. What is a note, my friends? It is an acknowledgement of debt. And that's why there's two signatories on that bill. And what is a bill? A bill of lading. But the two signatories represent a creditor and a debtor, and it's very important that you understand that. There is no gold or silver backing our money. There is no intrinsic value backing our, I don't want to use the word money because we do not have money, but backing our medium of exchange. It is based literally on by decree. And it says right on the bill, basically that this is by decree, private and funds and stuff like this, all debts can be satisfied with it, but it does not say, as our true money used to say that we were literally, you could go to the bank, bearer would get you an ounce of gold or an ounce of silver. The last time this country experienced that was during President John F. Kennedy's administration. He signed Executive Order 11110, very easy to remember, 2 11s and a 0. And basically what he did was he was restricting and reducing the power of the Federal Reserve to issuance of what we know now as dollars, which, as I said, are not dollars. Basically, my friends, what Kennedy did was he issued $2.68 billion worth of certificates, silver certificates. Now, if you go to a pawn shop these days, or an antiquity shop, you will find these. They're collector's items now. Of course, you can't go to the bank anymore and redeem it for your ounce of silver, but it would actually say on the bottom, the bearer would be redeemable in 1 ounce of silver. Now, what happened to our gold and silver? What took place is all comes back into the control, the issuance of the currency. Basically, my friends, the War of 1812 was a consequence of the Congress not signing along with the House of Rothschild to go ahead and have the Second Bank of the United States, which would be literally a private for-profit banking corporation. As the Federal Reserve that we have today is a private for-profit banking corporation. And I know this may sound very strange to a lot of you out there, but I invite you to go to your phone book. Look up the Federal Reserve. You will see it is listed right next to another private for-profit corporation called Federal Express. The name Federal Reserve, my friends, was put in deceitfully by a guy named Paul Warburg. He's known as the father of the Federal Reserve Act. And basically what took place was when, first of all, you got to understand, the Federal Reserve Act was written in Jekyll Island, Georgia. Liaisons from the different international bankers got together. And representatives, and the liaisons were Senator Aldrich from Rhode Island, who was a major player in organizing this, secretly I should say, and the other player was Edwin Mandell House, who was an aide-de-camp of President Wilson. Now, they met secretly, and they met at J.P. Morgan's private estate in Jekyll Island, Georgia. So what you have to understand, my friends, is that the Federal Reserve Act was not written in the halls of Congress. It was written secretly by representatives of the international banking community. And the act itself was put into play on December 23rd, 1913, while the Congress was away for the Christmas break. Now, when you read the 6 criteria that the Federal Reserve wanted to implement through this act, and I'll tell you, there's a great book out there if you really want to get into this heavily. It's by G. Edward Griffith. It's called The Creature from Jekyll Island. Outstanding book, really gets into it. He breaks it all down very well. But the 6 main objectives of this act, on the 6th one, they said when this system failed, not if this system failed, when this system failed, how to place the burden on the American taxpayer. Now, my friends, I ask you, what happened when the banks were too big to fail? Even though the banks that were too big to fail right now have some of the highest profit margins in their history, basically what has taken place is that the act itself, through the Federal Reserve Act, has placed the burden of when this system was going to fail. Now, how do they know this system was going to fail? Because there has never been a fiat money system in the history of mankind that has survived. But the name was put in deceitfully by this gentleman, Paul Warburg, that I was speaking of, because they wanted to make the American people believe it was federal, part of the government. And the other thing was they knew they were going to take all the intrinsic value of the country, which they have done. And they put in the word reserve to sow that seed back in 1913. So in 1933, on March 9th, 1933, when the corporation USA Inc. went insolvent to another corporation called the Federal Reserve Inc. And basically that's what's taken place. And you may be asking yourself, When did the United States government become a corporation? My friends, that's basically what the Civil War was about. But to answer that question, and I invite you to look this up, it's called the Organic Act of 1871. And a couple of things took place, excuse me here. First of all, what the Civil War was really about had nothing to do with freeing the black man. That was the political ruse, if you would, to get the people behind the cause. I want you to think of this. 6% of the population in the South, 6% of the population in the South owned slaves. Would you had left your family and your farm and everybody else that you loved and cared for to go and fight and risk life and limb, so 6% of the rich people of your society could have the right of slave ownership? What I mean by that statement, my friends, I'm talking about the 14th Amendment. I know this sounds crazy, I don't have a lot of time to get into it, but there actually are two constitutions. There's the Organic Constitution of 1789, and there's the post-Civil War Constitution, where it literally became a corporate charter. And what I mean by that is the 14th Amendment federalized all of us, basically making us property, if you would, of the corporation United States, Inc. And secondly, if you read it, you will also see there's parts in there where it says, and the debt shall not be questioned. Does that sound like a laissez-faire, true republic? Or does that sound more like someone has taken control over something? My friends, the structure of our country prior to the Civil War was this. It was God, the people, local, state, federal. They have completely flip-flopped that. Now it's federal, state, local, people, and they've done all they can to take God out of the equation. So, where does this come into Jade Helm? Stay with me, because we're going to get to Jade Helm and to see if this is relevant in our lives and in our future. So we go on to now, we have a series of created recessions, particularly the run of 1908 that was started by the bankers. It turned into a big consolidation of banks in this country by the major bankers, the Chefs, the Rothschilds, the Warburgs, the Morgans, and so forth. And then, my friends, as I described earlier, the Federal Reserve Act was, what they did was they went through that Hegelian dialectic that we talk about so much on the program. And for those of you that are watching this on YouTube, you haven't watched our program, let me take a quick minute to describe what the Hegelian dialectic is, because it is so important that you understand this concept, because it is used every day. Basically, my friends, please picture a triangle. And in one corner, the bottom of that triangle, you have to create a crisis. And that crisis can be anything from 9/11, which was a complete inside job. I hope you've done your research on that. It can be to fomenting, hey, we have too many drunk drivers on the roads, that type of thing. But anyway, you create a crisis. You get the emotional response you want from the people. And in that equation, you have to have fear. Fear is a major motivator for people to give up their liberties for the false sense of safety and security. And the other part of that equation, you acting upon that fear, and if you can throw some anger into that recipe, even better, from the crisis that you developed, the people will accept your authority, and they will accept the reduction of liberty for, again, the false sense of safety and security. It's called the Hegelian dialectic. My friends, Hitler, Goebbels was outstanding with this. He understood this concept completely. He used it on the German people all the time, from burning the Reichstag, which is the parliament building of Germany at that time, to Operation Gleichschutz, where they actually had actors dressed up as Polish soldiers, went over and invaded a radio station on the Polish-German border. That's how the German people literally said, yeah, you know, we're going to go to war with Poland because of Operation Gleichschutz. And this is what goes on all the time. I don't have the time to get into it too deeply, but it's the same thing with Pearl Harbor. It's the same thing with the Lusitania. It's the same thing with the USS Maddox and the Gulf of Tonkin resolution that brought us into Vietnam for 16 years, murdering millions of Vietnamese and thousands of American soldiers, and not to mention what it did to our society. So you got to understand, they create the crisis, they get the emotional response they want from the people, and it opens up the door for them to bring in their authority openly. The people willingly accept this. There's no more barrel of the gun. They can do it all through this Hegelian dialectic. So let us continue with our thought process here, taking our way to Jade Helm. So now we are at the point where the Federal Reserve Act comes into play in 1913. As I said, December 23rd, 1913, while the Congress was away for the Christmas break. We are federal property through the 14th Amendment. Everything's been federalized. And then we continue on to the point where the Great Depression comes. Now, the Great Depression was actually created, as so many spoke of, Louis T. McFadden, Charles Lindbergh Sr., so many spoke about this orchestrated event that was put together by the bankers, how they would enslave the nation through the use of debt. My friends, there's two ways to enslave a people. And one is through conquering them through the sword, and the other is conquering them through debt. And they have chosen the latter to conquer us, because in some ways it's so unseen. We see it in our pocketbooks. For instance, I used to, when I was 8 years old, I used to pump gas 6 hours every Sunday, and I got paid $2. And believe it or not, my friends, back then you actually had dollars, because there was still some silver backing our money. But I got paid $2. And back then, not that I eat candy, even as a child, but back then a candy bar was 5 to 10 cents. Well, today that same candy bar is 85 cents to $1.50. The candy bar has not changed. What has changed is the purchasing power of that medium of exchange. Now, what keeps the American, I should say their Federal Reserve note afloat? It's debt. Why would we accept something that is based on debt? Well, the reason is, my friends, number one, they say it's on the faith of the United States government. I don't know how many of you have faith in the United States government. Not many. But it is more based on the ignorance of the American people understanding their own money system, or as I like to say, lack of money system. And here's what I'm talking about. Henry Ford, I think, said it the best in 1933 when he said, "It is well the American people do not understand their money system, for if they did, I fear there would be revolution by morning." And what I am talking about, and what he is talking about, is the mechanics of our money system. Now, on our program, we have done a couple of shows on the document that was put out by the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago to teach their future hierarchy of the banking system the mechanics of the money system. It's called the money mechanics. I invite you to go online and look this up. Or if you'd like to, you can go to our program. Like I said, we did a couple of shows on that. You get it on YouTube at What's Going On, Tom D'Ambra, and it'll come right up, and you can watch this program. But my friends, what you've got to understand is that we do not have money. Money does not encompass debt. Money has to have intrinsic value, gold or silver. We have no gold or silver right now. There is nothing backing our money except for our ignorance of the understanding of our money system. So, the bankers have usurped all of our intrinsic value, the gold and silver. On March 9th, 1933, the corporation United States Inc. goes insolvent to this other private corporation, as I said earlier, the Federal Reserve. And what took place was the following. The Federal Reserve took all the gold and silver, as was their plan from day one in 1912 and 1911, when they met at Jekyll Island to create the Federal Reserve Act, and then they leaned the public trust, because the debt still wasn't settled. And this is why you do not own anything in this country. And what I mean by that is this, my friends. I want you to go to your deeds that you think you own property, and I want you to look at what is your standing in that deed. And you will find that you are either a tenant in common, a joint tenant, or a tenant. But you are a tenant. You are not owner. This is why you have a certificate of title and not a lordal title. A lordal title in Latin means absolute. You do not own your land, and that's why you have to pay your extortion fee every year that you know is property taxes, or a representative of the true owners of your property are going to come and take it. So they leaned the public trust that did not satisfy the debt. And the only thing left that this insolvent corporation had for property was you and I, our sweat equity. And a document called the birth certificate was developed. Now, very interesting about the birth certificate. I was born 11/10/58. On 11/12/58, I was bonded by the Midwest Bank Note Company. I actually have a copy of my bond. Now, you can go to the office of you have to go to the capital of your state where you were born. And they're going to want all kind of ID for you to get this. But you want a copy of the original birth certificate. Not the little card they give your mother. You want the hard copy of the original birth certificate. When you look down in the lower left, very small print, you will see a couple of things. One, it'll say this is secured paper, meaning it has value. And number two, it'll say either North American Bank Note Company or Midwest Bank Note Company. And I am telling you that this is the company that has bonded our sweat equity. It also, my friends, puts you under a commercial venue of law. Now, in a commercial venue of law, you are either a creditor or a debtor. Well, you don't own anything and you have been bonded. You are a debtor. And that's the reason why you do not own anything. You don't own your vehicle. And what this birth certificate does in a commercial venue of law, it creates an entity called the nom de guerre, which we don't have time to get into too greatly. But you know, I may seem like I'm jumping off of Jade Helm, but I want you to understand, my friends, that this thing is like a big web. And everything is connected unto this whole process. And it's very important that you understand your standing in law. And everyone knows in this country we used to have common law. Well, we no longer have common law. We have commercial law, and that also took place on March 9th, 1933. And if you want to get into that and what I'm speaking of, I invite you to read the Senate document 93-549, where it'll actually explain more of this into you, and it'll take you down the road to where you can actually have a better understanding than the short time that we have with you today. So, we're in a commercial law system. We don't have any true money. We have a Federal Reserve note, which is by decree. The other thing is, my friends, I want you to think about the standing of the United States government, Inc., being a debtor, being an insolvent debtor. If you're the creditor and I'm the debtor and the people out there are the voters / stockholders, who am I going to listen to as the debtor? Am I going to listen to the voters / stockholders, or am I going to listen to the creditors that's keeping this boat afloat? Obviously, you can answer that for yourself. I have to answer to the creditors, and that's why this whole ruse about, oh, we have to raise the debt ceiling. Are they going to raise the debt ceiling? Are they going to raise the debt ceiling? Let me ask you a question. If you wish to go to your bank and take out a second mortgage, by the way, how's that for a word? Mortgage, death pledge, look it up. And you're going to take out a second mortgage. Who's going to qualify yay or nay on that mortgage? Is it the banker / creditor, or is it you / debtor? Obviously, you have nothing to do with it. Understand, that's all a dog and pony show for you to be entertained by. Oh, we got to keep this thing going, so we got to raise the debt ceiling. They have nothing to do with it. They're filling out an application to the creditor. The creditor gives the final yay or nay, not the debtor. Basic economics, I'm sure you can all understand that. So next time you see this big facade about, oh, can they raise the debt ceiling? Are they going to raise the debt ceiling? It's a facade, just like what Obama said, that basically raising the debt ceiling doesn't raise the debt. Obviously it does. So, this is the standing of the United States government, Inc. It is an insolvent corporation. You are a surety to a facade debt through your sweat equity through an instrument called the birth certificate. So understand where we are. So now we're at March 9th, 1933. All these different things come into play. Law enforcement is basically, this is when state police come into play. The county sheriff's powers are reduced very much so. We've gone literally 29 years with motor vehicles on the roads of this country, and now all of a sudden we have to have licenses. And they have to sell everything to the people. Was that if you were profiting from the use of the public roads, you had to pay a fee for that. You had to be licensed. But understand that license put you under a commercial venue of law because you were engaged in commerce by the use of the public roads. It makes perfect sense that because you're profiting from the roads being supplemented by the public, that you would have to be licenses and pay fees for that. I think that a road usage tax is very applicable to what they were trying to do. But when the feds got involved here, what they wound up doing is mandating everybody get a license to travel on the roads. Now, you have the right of travel, obviously, or do you? You do, but when you're under a commercial venue of law, you are a commercial entity. You present that license to that police officer. Now, the police officer doesn't know this. All he knows is that you got to have a license to operate on the roads. By the way, you know what a driver is in law? A driver is one who engages on public roads for commercial use. That's why they say operator's license now, not driver's license like in the past. So, what they've done is they put everybody, when you travel, on a commercial venue of law. Your vehicle, if you go to your license plate, I don't care what state you're from, if you take the license plate itself and you play with it in the sun and flicker it like that, you will see a series of imprints in the center of the plate. They don't want you to see this, so you have to go into the sun and play with it, but you'll see it, and you'll see it as plain as day. Anyway, in law, that's called an endorser. And the endorser, it's like endorsing a check. Who owns that vehicle is the person who endorsed that plate. You will find it to be the state. As a matter of fact, the manufacturer's origination instrument that is put out by GM, Ford, Toyota, whoever, it doesn't go to you. It goes to the state, and that's how the state issues you a certificate of title. Again, remember that word. It's intrinsic, it has value, and bearer use of. Someone's allowing you to use something, certificate. So, you don't own anything. You're a debtor in a commercial venue of law. The United States government is an insolvent corporate entity answering to another for-profit corporation called the Federal Reserve and through the International Monetary Fund. This is where we are. So when it comes time that the gold is taken, the silver is taken, and the public trust is leaned, the only thing left was our sweat equity. They issue an instrument called the birth certificate. We're bonded. We're put into a debtor status in a commercial venue of law. This is why we do not own anything. Another thing took place in 1933. Understand, the bankers have just taken this corporation over. And what they did was they changed language from the original 1917 Trading with the Enemies Act from the 1933 Trading with the Enemies Act. And what was changed was some definitions. And the big one in this was the definition of enemy. The definition of enemy from the 1933 Trading with the Enemies Act was, and I quote, all citizens of the United States or those under the jurisdiction thereof. My friends, you, in flat language, from the congressional record, have been declared the enemy of the insolvent corporation United States. Think of that. Now, it goes on. So then we have a different series of false flags that go on, but the big one that has taken us down this road recently was 9/11. Anyone who's done any research will tell you 9/11 was a complete inside job. I mean, architects and engineers have come out about it. Witnesses have come out about it. There were people prior to the event of 9/11 in June and July saying, call your congressmen, call your senators, let them know that we know they're going to use bin Laden to blow up a building in lower Manhattan. I mean, it was that obvious. There were other countries warning the United States that this was taking place, including Russia and many others. Germany. The Defense Secretary of Germany at that time came out and called 9/11 a complete inside job that was facilitated by organizations within the United States government and the Israeli Mossad. Literally, that's the German Defense Secretary at the time. Now, what's taken place since 9/11? We've had the Patriot Acts implemented, which, by the way, my friends, the Patriot Acts were written prior to 9/11. But what else has taken place is some very dangerous things that make us understand the concern about Jade Helm. One is that in 2007, there was some things put together that they developed an operation called, it wasn't actually, I'm sorry, it was not an operation, it was an organization. It was called Northcom. And what they literally did here is they put an active combat brigade within these United States. So, and we have to go back a little bit to understand some of these other things that have taken place. Like, for instance, where did the FEMA camps come from? Now, there's no denying that these FEMA camps exist. Not only can you see pictures of them, not only can you hear testimony about them, not only can you go to the GAO office and find out the funding for them, but all you have to do is listen to former Attorney General John Ashcroft speaking in front of Congress about them, and he called them internment camps. And I found that to be a very interesting word. So at the time, I went and looked up the word interment, and the word interment means to bury, to rid of. And that's exactly what they are looking to do. When did this operation begin? Yes, it was long before the event of 9/11, my friends. I invite you to look up Rex 84, and that's where the funding began for the building of these FEMA camps, the financing and planning and logistical support of these FEMA camps. And you know, and we have read to you on our program before some different documents regarding these FEMA camps. We've gone over some of the logistics. Hey, we even got the Army Manual, FM 3-39.40, where they actually spoke of the internment camps. We actually have the paperwork where the MOS, Military Occupational Specialty, for internment camp specialists. These are the people that are going to man these camps and so forth. Of course, when these camps were sold to the American people, once the word came out about them, they were done as all tyrants do. Necessity, my friends, is the cry of tyrants, and what they did was they said, this is for your own good. If we have big hurricanes or bad storms, we're going to be able to house you. Well, there's some other big things, big buildings that are sold on for that purpose also. And I'll speak of the NFL football stadiums. Did you know the NFL is a tax-free foundation? It's a 501c4. And how is that? How is it an organization that makes a little over $2 billion a year not paying taxes? Why? Because the stadiums that you fund through municipal bonds when they're built are signed off to the Department of Homeland Security so they can be used at any time for the usage of Department of Homeland Security. This is how they got their tax-free status. It was an exchange. Who financed all this? You financed both ends of it. The municipal bonds and Department of Homeland Security and all the other alphabet agencies that go along with it. So, Rex 84, 1984, and I know a lot of you out there are thinking, hey, wait a minute, Tom, this couldn't have happened. Ronald Reagan was president. Ronald Reagan was president, my friends, but let me tell you something. The last president, in my humble opinion, that tried to actually do something for the American people was John F. Kennedy, and look what happened to him. I have read at least 60 to 65 books in the JFK assassination. I have watched and viewed and studied, I don't know, 10, 30, maybe 20 to 30 documents on the JFK assassination. I invite you to go to the following documentary that's out there on YouTube. It's outstanding. It is the best research I have seen done on the JFK assassination and many, many other subjects. But it's called JFK to 9/11, Everything is Rich Man's Tricks. And I invite you to view that documentary. Yes, it's a little long, but you will not be able to turn it off if you have an interest in understanding history and truthful history. As you know, and I keep saying about truthful history, William Casey, I think, summed it up the best. William Casey, former CIA director, when he made the statement, he said, we will know when our disinformation program is a success, when everything the American people believe is false. Well, first of all, who's we? So there is an organization out there, there is a group of people out there, oligarchs, if you would, that are trying to manipulate the world for a new world order. What disinformation program was he speaking of? I will tell you. The media, the indoctrination system that you know is the school system. You realize the mainstream media is owned by 6 corporations throughout the world. 6 corporations. That's amazing. I also call it the dinosaur media because it is dying. People are starting to seek real truth. They know they're being lied to. They know there's something amiss here, and they are seeking for truth. And as I say on our program, and I say throughout whenever I speak with people, that education is our best ammo. I'm a firm believer if every mother understood what they did to their child by signing a birth certificate and bonding them as a surety to the facade debt of a bunch of international bankers, there'd be revolution by morning. I agree with Henry Ford's statement that if the American people ever understood that, no, it is well the American people do not understand the money system, for if they did, I feel there'd be a revolution by morning. I totally concur with that. If, in fact, the American people awaken to just these 2 pieces of truth, the people would get off the couch and actually get active in the processes that are still available to us to regain our republic. So, where are we with the perspective of Jade Helm? We are at the perspective that we understand a couple of things already. One, the United States was a corporation through the Organic Act of 1871. Two, we have no intrinsic value to our money. The private corporation Federal Reserve has taken all that. Three, the public trust is lien. We do not own anything. Also, the fact that we are a surety to the debt through an instrument called the birth certificate. Also, we understand that through the Trading with the Enemies Act of 1933, that we have been declared the enemy of that insolvent corporation, United States, Inc. Also, we understand that this insolvent corporation is answering to its creditors, the Federal Reserve Bank and the International Monetary Fund. We also have the understanding that that these FEMA camps have been developed and been being built and financed and logistically supported since the program Rex 84. That's Romeo Echo X-Ray 84. And you can go on the internet and research that. And this is when this process began. We understand that 9/11 was a complete inside job, as so many other things have been in the past. We now have an understanding of the Hegelian dialectic: problem, reaction, solution. We understand also, my friends, and let us continue after 9/11, that the NDAA 12, we have the understanding that NORTHCOM, an active combat brigade, was established in this country. And then we come to the National Defense Authorization Act 12, where the United States, Inc., declared the geographical area known as the United States of America a battleground, to use their word. Yes, my friends, NDAA 12, I invite you to look this up. They declared the geographical area known as United States of America a battleground. And that is the word they use, battleground. So let me see. You've been declared the enemy. You have no standing in the commercial law because you're a debtor. You don't own your property. You are bonded as a surety to a facade debt to international bankers. My friends, there's an active combat brigade in this country. Posse Comitatus, which forbid the United States government from using the military against the people, the civilian population, was vanquished during the John Warren Defense Authorization Act. And now through NDAA 12, we discover that the United States geographical area, USA, has been declared a battleground. So with all this consolidated information, and I've been very quick, I have a very limited time with you, I want to ask all the people out there about Jade Helm who are saying that it is not relevant, nothing to be concerned about for the future of our country, being the fact that we have been declared the enemy, being the fact there is an active combat unit in this country, being the fact that Posse Comitatus, which forbid the military from being used against the military, has been vanquished by the John Warren Defense Authorization Act, being the fact that we're the declared enemy, our land is the declared battleground, should we have concern of the fact that the United States military is currently openly drilling for the eradication of local militants? What is a militant? My friend, the political choice of words is terrorist. Who is the #1 terrorist on the Department of Homeland Security's terrorist watch list? Veterans. Veterans are the #1 terrorist threat to this insolvent corporation. And there's a reason for that. This actually makes sense to me. One, you're robbing the people. Two, you have robbed the people. You're not robbing the people, you have robbed the people. And veterans, my friends, I was in the military myself. I spent time in the Marine Corps. And I will tell you something about veterans. Veterans have something that is very lacking in our society. It's called honor. We have taken an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I did not say defend the United States government. I said the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. My friends, the enemy is not at the gate. The gate no longer exists. Think about this. I want you to think about this. You and I, to travel in our own country, we have to be inspected, we have to be prodded, we have to have checks done on us for us to travel in our own country. But the southern border is wide open. And 21,000 people a week, from different reports that we're reading, are coming over that border with no accountability. And as a matter of fact, my friends, the agreements were signed with the two bus services that are bringing these people all over the country January prior to the June that this started taking place. How did this happen? How are all these people at times going through 3 international borders without any check process going on? Can you say North American Union? This is asymmetrical warfare against the American people. They are destroying our culture. Of course, they're bringing in all, who knows what they're bringing in. Obviously, the people who work with the government bringing in the drugs are coming across. And how they sell it to the American people? Oh, they had to sell it to poor children, My friends, according to the Border Patrol, only 17 to 19%, depending on what post they're talking about, the people coming across that border are categorized as children. But they have to sell it to you. The poor children. Let me ask you, if you were a parent, and yes, things are bad, would you allow your child just to get on a train to go to another place and not accompany them? And they're going to travel through 3 international borders? Would you really allow that? I don't believe so. So what you've got to understand, my friends, is that this is being done on purpose. As Franklin Delano Roosevelt said, in politics, nothing happens by chance. If it happened, it was meant to be. And that's exactly what's going on here. So we are at this point where being declared the enemy, the land has been declared a battleground. There's an active combat unit, and now the military is openly, through the use of special forces, participating in this directly. Well, but they said 9, but we have accountability of 13 states now. And go on the internet and look at all the military hardware that is being put in placement throughout the country. Look at what they've done with the domestic security forces. Do you remember President Obama when he was a candidate? And I'll never forget the Vietnam veteran, had the big Vietnam veteran hat in the background, and he's clapping as hard as he can clap. And President Obama, or Barry Soetoro, is going on about, we need a domestic security force that is well financed and well equipped as our military. Why? Why do we need that? Because at that time, the military was not supposed to be used against the civilian population. What do they know that we do not know? They know what's coming, my friends. They know that history dictates what's coming. There has never been a country, a culture, an organization in the history of the world, in the history of mankind, to use a debt-based currency and survive. Not from the Byzantines, the Greeks, the Romans, the Zimbabwe, however, and it's going to be the Americans. Look what's going on with the pigs, Portugal, Ireland, Italy, Greece, and Spain. Did they have anything in common? Their culture's not in common. Geographically, they're not in common. Historically, they're not in common. What's the one common denominator they have? And they're all going under. They're under the same banking system that we are under, organized and orchestrated secretly by international bankers. My friends, nothing has changed. Andrew Jackson, they put him on the $20 bill. And the reason why they did was because he killed the second bank of the United States. As I said, that's what the War of 1812 was about. You know what he wrote on his gravestone and what he won on his gravestone? I killed the bank. That's what's on his gravestone. They had to put him on their fiat money. That's why they did that. Why they put Ben Franklin. Think about it. Ben Franklin wasn't even an American president. Why? Because he fought against the bankers hand and foot, and he made it publicly in his writings that the main reason for the revolution was because of the international bankers. King George not allowing the colonists to issue their own non-bearing interest script. John F. Kennedy fought against the bankers. Look what happened to him. Abraham Lincoln said it so eloquently when the House of Rothschild, who was financing the North, said to him, they offered him a credit program at 24% interest, and he would not do it for the good of his nation. And what did Abraham Lincoln say? I have the Confederate Army in my front yard, and I have the international bankers in my backyard. And for the sake of the future of my nation, it is the international bankers I fear the most. Look what happened to Abraham Lincoln. Look what happened to President Garfield when he spoke out against the bankers. Look what happened to President McKinley when he spoke out against the bankers. So, my friends, the stakes are high. And so you take all this information, and this is a very, very brief presentation. If you wish to learn more, I invite you to go on the internet, go to your library. You can learn all this stuff. You know, when I started doing research, my friends, 30 years ago, there was no internet. You had to spend a lot of money on books. You had to write away to the congressional record to get different things. Now there's no excuse. It's all there at your fingertips, my friends. You can find it all. So, is Jade Helm relevant in our future? Yes, it is, and I will tell you why. The military is saying here that we are doing this to train for overseas. Well, I spent some time in the military, and I will tell you, anytime that we train for anything overseas, they would build little towns of it. If you're going to go to Cambodia, if you're going to go to Vietnam, if you were going to go to future in Iraq and Afghanistan and Somalia, the Sudan, wherever these places, they would copy that in these training grounds on military bases here in the United States, but not in the civilian population. And they were all, the infrastructure, everything was geared to the theater that you were about to participate in. The United States military, my friends, is training for their future warfare. And that is here in the United States of America. Whether it be the economic collapse that is bound to happen. Do I know when? No. Does anybody know when? No. But what we do know is that history is our barometer, and it will take place. My friends, I want you to understand something about our money system before we leave you. First of all, we do not have a money system. Second of all, every time the United States Treasury, which is an insolvent entity, wants to, say, print 1 million Federal Reserve notes, they make a request to the Federal Reserve to print this Federal Reserve notes. The Federal Reserve makes a ledger entry and gives the insolvent Treasury permission to do so. And because they gave us permission to do it, to print it, there is an interest bond due on it. So if you have one Federal Reserve note and now there's another Federal Reserve note due interest on, and you print that other Federal Reserve note to cover the initial interest, now it doubles. It's perpetual debt. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? The other thing is this, my friends. I want you to think of this. These very same international bankers got $28.3 trillion with no accountability. Right? You know, as a top fund. Matter of fact, MSNBC is such an important entity to these bankers that they actually, MSNBC, to stay on the air, actually got top money fund. I know that sounds crazy. Please look it up. But these bankers got 28.3 trillion Federal Reserve notes. They gave us permission to print to give to them. And because they gave us permission to print this 28.3 trillion Federal Reserve notes to give to them, now there is an interest bond due on every one of that 28.3 trillion Federal Reserve notes to the very same international bankers that gave us permission to print it to give to them in the first place. This is where we are, my friends. This is called perpetual debt. So in a nutshell, we have no standing in law in a commercial venue. We're debtors. We do not have any possessions. We're debtors. We have been bonded through international banks, so the Midwest Bank Note Company or the North American Bank Note Company, as a surety to a facade debt. We do not have a money system because it does not encompass an intrinsic valued commodity. There is, for every one of them Federal Reserve notes in your pocket, there is an interest-bearing note due on it, which is takes you down the road of perpetual debt. You've been declared the enemy. Your land has been declared a battleground. There is an active combat brigade called NORTHCOM in the United States. So let me ask you, my friends, should the American people be concerned about Operation Jade Helm? Hometown eradication of local militants. Think of that. As always, my friends, we are very, very thankful you took the time from your busy day to join us. For those of you on YouTube, if you are looking to see more of our programs, which are more structured, this was sort of an emergency broadcast because I was seeing a lot on the internet that a lot of people were saying that this was irrelevant, no need for concern. Well, I wholeheartedly disagree. I asked the people out there who are making these statements, one, maybe you're making them out of ignorance. I have no problem with that, except for that I would ask you that before you make these statements, you would educate yourself on it. And number two, I would also wonder if some of these people that are making these statements, who they're actually working for. Because there's an awful lot of information out there that you can get, a lot more than what I've just spoken about rather briefly. But you, in my humble opinion, my friends, being that we've been declared the enemy, being that our battleground is the geographical area of the United States has been declared a battleground, being that we are debtors in a commercial law system, what happened to our common law system, my friends? I humbly say that we have a great deal of concern, and I applaud Governor Abbott of Texas to actually give the marching orders to the State National Guard that they are to particularly observe and report to him all the findings of the operations of Jade Helm in his state of Texas. My friends, we're very thankful you take the time of your busy day to watch our program. I know this is way outside our normal for our participating viewers here locally in the state of Vermont and New Hampshire. But I just thought it was necessary that we get this word out, not only to you locally, but also we are on YouTube and actually broadcasting now in 62 different countries throughout the world, which we're very happy about. And my friends, this isn't unique to the United States. This is a battle for mankind, not just the United States. So again, we're thankful you take the time from your day to watch our program. We always close in asking you to seek truth, to obtain knowledge, to manifest kindness to your fellow man. And we always close in reminding you that your government is your responsibility. We thank you for viewing.